Raising our hands. It's a great day to learn. I appreciate you taking time out of your afternoon to come see me. There's a lot of good speakers here this week. Ton. A lot of people from Microsoft. Who is in Azure currently? Oh, cool. How many like Azure? Yay! Okay. Huh? Until security gets a hold of it. Yeah. Security may or may not pop up in this presentation. We're only here for 20 minutes, but I do have business cards up here. I am a consultant by trade, so obviously shameless plug. We like to do things in Azure. I also have a bag full of laptop stickers. If you are a laptop sticker fanado, I have company and personal branded laptop stickers. After the session, feel free to come up and grab some. And this is a 20-minute session, and I apologize in advance for my voice. It seems like every time I come to London, my sinuses decide to dump, and I sound like a bullfrog. It happened last year when we were in London and went to Wales, which is a phenomenal venue over there, but more people coming in. Holy smokes. You all really want to know what not to do in Azure, huh? And since we don't have a whole lot of time, I don't have any demos or anything, so this is all talking points. If you have questions, feel free to ask. Azure is a very large, complex beast, and I will tell you up front, I don't know all the answers. I'm a DBA by trade. I was dragged into Azure kicking and screaming. Oh, the cloud's a fad, it's not gonna stay. Well, it's here to stay, folks. But as a DBA, I've learned a lot along my way, and that's what we're going to talk about today. I think it's time. Yeah? Yep. All right, cool. Do we have people online? Yes. All right, cool. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. This is me. I'm John Morehouse. I'm a principal consultant for a small consulting firm called Denny Cherry Associates. I am based out of Kentucky in the United States, so I work remote. Every time I do a presentation, I tell people that's my email address at work, john@dcac.com. If you have questions about the presentation today, or if you have questions around something in Azure, or more specifically, something about SQL Server and your databases, send me an email. I'm happy to try to help answer the question. If I don't know the answer, I might be able to point you in the right direction. I'm a huge believer in the community that we see here and helping each other. That's what we're all here about, right? We should be helping each other. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me. I'm on Twitter. That's SQLRUS, not SQL Russ. I do blog sometimes at SQLRUS.com. I will tell you that I'm a diehard DBA. I like to blog about the internal structures of how SQL Server works. I'm highly involved in the data community at large, but we're here to talk about Azure. More specifically, things in Azure infrastructure that I've seen in my couple years moving people to Azure of what not to do. One of the first things, and somebody brought it up, forgetting to lock the door when you go to Azure. How many times have you heard of a data breach because somebody put something in a cloud provider that was unlocked? An S3 bucket, somewhere in a blob storage that they turned on anonymous access, right? One of the other things that we forget to do is not planning your network. Do I have any network admins here? Not a single one, right? I will tell you up front, I am not a network admin. What I will tell you, if you move to Azure, you want to move to Azure, and you don't do your due diligence beforehand, you will get yourself into a heap of trouble by not planning out your network. Because it's not isolated. You want to connect your on-premises environment to Azure. If you don't plan your network correctly, or at least think about it, you run into overlapping IP spaces. IP addresses you can't have the same IP address in two different places, and you get into trouble. And moving resources in Azure and redoing things is significantly more complex, or can be, than in your on-premise network cabinet where you can go click, 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 right? Take time and plan out your network. Get somebody who is a network admin to look at your plan. because they have the knowledge about things that you're not going to think about because you're not a network admin. I'm lucky, my boss, Denny Cherry, is really good at this. When I migrate people from on-premises to Azure, I make him review what I've stood up to make sure I haven't screwed it up. Not because I did it wrong, but because I know where my weaknesses are, and that's one of them, right? Not evaluating potential attack vectors. Who here goes back to their Azure environment on a routine basis and does pen testing? One person, two, okay, three, four. Out of a room that probably has 100 people, 4% does this. Now do you wonder why breaches happen? Network and security are not a set and forget it event, because how many people can touch your Azure environment? I worked for a client that had a very, very large, well-known fast food restaurant, huge Azure implementation. Do you know how many people they had touching their Azure infrastructure? What are the odds that somebody made a mistake? Go back and review what you have in Azure and where the vulnerabilities might be. Did somebody open up anonymous on your blob storage account? Thankfully, Azure, that's not by default. By default, if you create an Azure blob storage account, anonymous is turned off. You physically have to go enable that. Did somebody do it unknowingly? You won't know unless you go back and look. So when you put things into Azure, make sure that you are evaluating attack vectors so that you don't get listed in the newspaper as a data breach. We don't want that in any way, shape, or form. Azure is full of things that will make things more secure. I mentioned things like managed identity or Key Vault. Anybody here using Key Vault? Good, yeah. Key Vault is phenomenal. It's a password manager in the cloud. If your applications are still using SQL authentication in the year of our Lord 2024, you should really look at how you're authenticating your applications to the database and look at using managed identity for your apps. Use Key Vault to store your passwords. Start looking at what Azure offers you to implement better security for your applications and your database and your environment. When you go to Azure, take that step and look and see what it offers. We've migrated clients to Azure, and they don't want to do any looking down the street and making changes because change is hard. Well, we don't have the work, we don't have the people to make the changes to make that work. And so they put unsecured applications or bad practices in the cloud, and that makes it worse, right? We've seen that happen. So make sure you take time to just look a little further ahead. This is a favorite. Anybody here not enforce MFA? Sweet. Nobody raised their hands. Spoiler, it exists. I had another client, guess what they did not enforce on my global admin account? Actually, it wasn't global admin. I had contributor on certain production subscriptions. Make sure you go back and every account has MFA enforced. And make sure that they set it up and enforce it, right? I don't care what your policies are. Oh, the admins don't need it. Enforce it. This is a big one. As a consultant, I see this more often than not, and it's scary. If you're not doing it, go change that policy. And talk to other consultants. They see it too, right? We want to make sure that we secure our Azure environment. Forgetting the Benjamins. I know I'm in the UK. The Benjamins are on the $100 US bill. I don't know how many times we've moved clients or got brought into new clients, and they forget about the money. I'm happy because sometimes we get a cut from that, from Azure. Yay, free money, right? But forgetting the cost is crazy. Who's using reservations or savings plans? Not enough of you. Reservations can save you up to like 75% of your resources in Azure. You are tossing money out the door, people. Savings plans is about compute. You tell Azure, you tell Microsoft, I'm going to spend X number of compute. You get a discounted rate. You can save up to like 30% on your compute in Azure. Reservations is about VMs. You reserve a VM size and type in a specific region, and you can get up to 75% discounted price. There's 1 year, 3 year reservations. If you are not evaluating those two for your organization, you are leaving money on the table, and Microsoft will happily take it from you. If you want to give somebody money, I will give you my bank account, right? Budgets. Who's using budgets in Azure? Okay, cool. Has anybody ever gotten that surprise 7,000, 8,000 pound bill from Azure because somebody stood something up and forgot about it? Yeah, there's one hand back in the back. That happens. Budgets are a great way to keep track of the spend of your resources. So if you keep track of, you can set up a budget and it will tell you where you're at and where your forecasted spend is going to be to help you identify to make sure that nobody stood something up. I can stand up a virtual machine in Azure that's going to cost you $40,000 a month, right? Make sure you set up budgets. Use them. Hybrid licensing. Who's running Windows VMs in Azure? Probably everybody, most people. If you are running Windows and you have licenses on premises, you get a discount using virtual machines in Azure, as long as you have software assurance. So if you have software assurance, you get a discount of running an Azure Windows virtual machine. If you're not doing that, you're leaving money on the table, and my bank account will be happy to take it from you, right? This is more SQL related. If you are running SQL Server in Azure as a disaster recovery virtual machine, you can specify it to be DR. You get that SQL license absolutely for free. That's a benefit that Microsoft released, year or two years ago, something like that, I remember. I'm asking my two compadres back there. That's free money. If you have a big organization, you have multiple SQL boxes. We had a client, my colleague Monica and I had a client, they had a box that had 96 cores. Do you want to know what the licensing cost for SQL Enterprise was? A lot, right? Make sure that you are selecting DR licenses for SQL boxes in the cloud, if they're using it for true DR, right? As long as you're meeting that requirement. Okay. How much time do I got? Where am I? 9 minutes? Okay, cool. Choosing the wrong one. This is about choosing the wrong door. Many times we move things to Azure and the client has chosen the wrong door. My kids love Indiana Jones, right? So this is the Indiana Jones, #3, Last Crusade, choose wisely, right? Make sure when you go to Azure, choose the right freaking solution. Sometimes we get involved with clients and they've chosen the wrong thing, and that's difficult to unwind. They've invested so much money to get to Azure because they think cloud is going to solve all their problems. Spoiler, sometimes the cloud's worse. Sometimes the lift and shift of just picking up a virtual machine and dropping it in the cloud, your application latency is going to suck and it's worse. So when you go to cloud, and I know it said Azure, but really any cloud provider, make sure you choose the right thing. If you don't know, get a consultant. Find somebody, invest the money to find the right person that can give you some guidance. I don't care if it's me, I don't care if it's anybody else, but find somebody, ask for help. Get the right solution before you move it. There are multiple ways to move to Azure. There are multiple ways to move SQL Server to Azure. If you have a large data estate on premises and you try to move to Azure in certain ways, it'll crush the migration. Anybody ever try to do an export for a backpack on a 5 terabyte database? Did it work? Yeah, this young woman up here is shaking her head saying it took a long time. You're lucky because most of the times it will crash and burn like crazy. How you move from on-premises to Azure can make a difference. Again, get a consultant. Again, not me. It doesn't have to be me. I'm totally fine with that. But make sure you choose the right path. Choosing the wrong implementation. is really more about the migration path and the solution altogether, right? Make sure you're going to the right spot, right? This is my favorite, my absolutely favorite. This is what we call a rabid backhoe. I don't know how many times I've talked to organizations that they think the cloud literally will fix all their problems, including their DR problems. I actually gave a talk yesterday where I talked about DR in the cloud. I don't know if anybody noticed, there was an event in central United States. They had snow show up on the power units of the data center. The blizzard that ran through about central Iowa pushed snow, was blowing so hard, it pushed snow up the eaves, and they had piles of snow sitting on top of the electrical components in the data center. I did not have that on my Azure DR bingo card. That was not on my card, right? Make sure that you figure out and remember how to prepare for DR in the cloud. Your DR strategy on premises might not work the same in Azure. Do your due diligence. Make sure you have a DR strategy for the cloud because the cloud's just another computer. You are leasing it and renting it from Microsoft. They have outages. Singapore last year had a massive power surge that data centers in that availability zone were down for 12 hours. If they did, the customers that in that region did not have a DR strategy, they were down. There's nothing you can do. You cannot get into that data center to go fix it. You cannot get into that data center to go touch things. If you don't have a DR strategy, you are SOL. And that is pretty much out of luck. Surely out of luck. It's actually another word, but I'm going to use surely. Choosing the wrong DR strategy. There are multiple DR strategies that Microsoft does offer. Things like Azure Backup for VMs, Azure Backup for SQL Server, Azure Site Recovery, all good products, all have pros and cons. Don't just blindly throw a dart and pick one because they could affect your availability. Azure Site Recovery, I think, is a great solution for the right environment. If you have a highly volatile workload in SQL, it'll make things go sideways. You have to be careful with it. So choose the right strategy. I don't care. I'd rather have you have the wrong strategy than no strategy. If you have no strategy, I call that at level 0. Make sure you level up. I don't care what level you get to, but don't stay at level 0. Not testing your DR strategy. One of the beauty things about ASR, Azure Site Recovery, you can actually test your DR process. You can go into the Azure portal. Where am I at? One? 4. Okay, go. Azure Site Recovery, you can go into the portal on your virtual machines and say test failover and push a button. And it will isolate your DR in a bubble where it's not destructive to your production workloads. If you are in Azure and you do not have a disaster recovery scenario, you're failing your organization. If you have a DR strategy in Azure, I applaud you. If you're not testing it, you are failing your organization. Because a DR strategy that you don't test and you know for sure that it won't or that it will work is a failure in my mind. There's a gentleman in the community, his name is Jonathan Cahias. Anybody know John? John's a phenomenal guy, great guy, smart guy. He used to work for, he works for SQL Skills, Paul Randall, Kimberly Tripp. He used to work for, I believe, Outback. He told the story years ago and it always stuck in my mind. His manager used to walk into the data center and randomly yank drives out of their servers without telling the team. And he was part of the DBA team. So that manager literally would be just walking around, yanking drives routinely, like every quarter, whatever. And that always stuck in my head. If you aren't doing the same for your Azure implementation, whether it's SQL or not, your VM, your web servers, app servers, your firewalls, your networking gear, your routes, everything. You have to think about it a little bit more holistically. If you're not doing it, you're failing your organization. Quick summary, because I think I'm about out of time. Plan the network. Please, as a consultant who comes in after the fact quite often, if you take the time and plan your network, you will save yourself a monstrous amount of headache later down the road. If you don't know, if you're not a network admin like me, find somebody who will. Pay the money, get a consultant who can help you for a few hours, walk you through the plan. Nobody likes to do good security because good security is hard. It's painful. Users don't like it, CEOs don't like it, nobody likes it because I have umpteen number of clients, I have to MFA for all of them. I have more MFA clients on my phone than I care to admit. Because everybody uses a different, Duo, Microsoft, Google, whatever, right? Do the due diligence, take the pain, and do the proper security. Perfect. Monitor your spending. I would love to take your money, but really as a consultant, part of my job is to make sure we save you money. That's one of the reasons I work for Denny, because Denny's more about the tech and making cool things work and saving you money. I love it when I can go to my clients and go, hey, if we make this checkbox, apply this licensing, I can save you 75% of your Azure bill. Nobody has ever come back to me and said, oh, don't do that. We like spending money. Don't do that. Nobody has ever done that. So make sure you're monitoring your spending, okay? Evaluate all the options. I will tell you flat out, there are some organizations that do not belong in the cloud. That's okay. If you're going to the cloud, take the time. Look at things. Get a consultant, again. If you're not familiar with Azure or any other cloud provider, find somebody who is and get their opinion, get their guidance. Okay, there's a bunch of documentation online. Okay, choose wisely. I think I'm done. I like feedback. I'm a speaker. If you hated this session, that's okay. I can take it. I'm a big boy. Tell me why. Help me make it better. If you loved it, I'd want to hear that too. I like feedback, really, honestly I do. I will be here somewhere. I got business cards, stickers, whatever. That's it. Email me, you got questions. That was quick 20 minutes. That's it, that's all I got.